Brexit trade talks with the US are poised to be ripped apart, according to one expert, who warned that the likely Democrat candidate for the 2020 US elections, Joe Biden, will prove a difficult customer for Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Joe Biden has all but sealed his place as the Democratic Party's candidate to take on Donald Trump in this year's U.S. election after Bernie Sanders suspended his campaign yesterday. The Democratic Socialist told his supporters that he could not see a way back into the race, having made an impressive start in opening primaries. However, the tide turned on Super Tuesday when Mr. Biden secured victory in 10 of the 14 states voting. While this has huge consequences for the U.S., Boris Johnson's post-Brexit trade talks with the country could also be plunged into doubt. This is because, as Professor Stephen Berman highlights, Biden is pro-European and has previously blasted Brexit as diminishing Washington's interest in the UK. If Mr. Biden is to beat Donald Trump, Professor Berman told Express, Biden will be middle of the road, he will drive a hard bargain. Biden is very pro-European, pro-NATO, he wants to build up the European and NATO relationship so he could be more sympathetic to Brussels. Professor Berman adds that Mr. Biden finds Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Trumpian politics to be a red flag which could also see UK-US relations suffer if the Democrat becomes president. He also warned that Mr. Johnson's election victory will only cause concern for Mr. Biden as a result of the pair's similarities. The expert on U.S. politics continued, yes, they will see it, Johnson's victory, as something of a problem. It's not just a matter of Johnson, it's what he is representing, a sort of working-class populism in this. Some of the right-wing populism in Europe, some of Trump's people have been actively encouraging that way of thinking. They aren't very fond of the EU, they see it as a deep state liberal establishment. What Johnson represents is sympathetic to the Trump view of the world, they see it as a movement and a wave of challenge to the establishment, and Joe Biden won't be sympathetic. In October 2018, Mr. Biden admitted that the UK's decision to vote in favour of Brexit diminished Washington's interests in the UK. While making the talk at Chatham House, he also admitted that were he British, he would have voted Remain. The former vice president said, had I been a member of parliament, had I been a British citizen, I would have voted. From the U.S. perspective, U.S. interests are diminished with Great Britain not being an integral part of Europe and being able to bring influence. There's growing awareness that Britain played a role in Europe the last 30 years that went well beyond the notion of open borders and trade, being able to influence attitudes. Mr. Biden, speaking in October 2018, also noted the frequently lauded special relationship between the US and UK, hinting that it could suffer after the UK leaves the bloc, as it did on January 31. He added, there is a special relationship, we've been locked cheek to jowl on almost every important issue. Without England being totally integrated, to the extent that it's distant, diminishes our ability to have influence on a